Last year, at the end of my Metroid Fusion review, I mentioned a game that had been in development for years, like it was some kind of ghost project that only existed in rumors and speculation, so imagine my surprise when the following June, we got some news about the Metroid series that no one was expecting. I guess the delay on Metroid Prime 4 wasn't too surprising. The development of that one's been a little rough so far, but that was the case for the original Prime 2, and we can tackle this new entry whenever it's actually been released. But that's okay, because they still had something to get Metroid fans hyped up that day. I don't think I can accurately describe exactly how I felt when Dread was announced, but I can show you.
Oh, I will explain it all to you later. What's it? Yeah! Yes! Oh my god! So many years waiting for this!
This was an enormous deal to Metroid fans. We had some remakes and fan games and such, but not since Fusion had we seen a brand new 2D Metroid title, and that game came out almost 20 years ago. So hearing that a team who delivered a pretty dang solid remake of Metroid 2 was taking over to give us a game that had existed in passing interviews and forum posts for the last 2 decades was nothing short of a dream come true. And now it's here. I actually have Metroid Dread in my hands, but before we talk about it, I should clarify a couple of things. First of all, this is a follow-up to Mercury Steam's previous work in the Metroid series, that being Samus Returns, and it builds off of some mechanics and everything from that. But I was already planning on covering remakes and spin-offs in 2022's Metroid month when I started this whole mess last year. I just never could have fathomed that this game would have existed at all, let alone released before I could have tackled Samus Returns. So I do have to do things a little out of order here, but secondly, this is a spoiler-heavy review. I was originally going to try to split things up between sections, you know, story, gameplay, everything like that. But if you want to go into this game blind, I recommend going into it completely blind. That covers everything between narrative to gameplay. So this is just if you want to hear my thoughts on the game as it stands right now. For everyone still here, spoilers ahead, this is Metroid Dread. So like I said before, this was developer Mercury Steam's second project in the Metroid series after their work on Samus Returns, a retelling of the bounty hunter's adventures on planet SR-388 to eradicate the Metroid species. To give my quick thoughts on that now, I actually really enjoy this game. It's not my favorite in the series, but it's a good showcase of where the series could continue to go, and it was just so great to see Nintendo finally spark some life back into this franchise. It seemed like Sakamoto was really pleased with their work as well. He decided he could entrust this team with the project that he kept on the back burner for years. Originally planned to be a game on the Nintendo DS running off a really similar engine to Fusion, Dread was finally going to move the story further a bit, but those plans never really came together, and it seemed like Sakamoto just wasn't satisfied with how the current tech he had to work with was treating the idea for his game. But now that he had his little crew chosen, it was finally time to resurrect Dread, and a lot of us had no idea that it was being teased with Samus Returns itself. By collecting every item in the game, you can unlock special images showing off the history of the Chozo race on planet SR-388, their colonization of the planet, the discovery of the dangerous Parasite X that could possess living organisms and served as the main threat of Fusion, the creation of the Metroids to combat this threat, and the loss of control as the Chozo are driven out of the planet by the evolving creatures. But if you reach 100% completion, you see the Chozo responsible for creating the Metroids meeting with some kind of general, and before you can put together what all this means, the scene takes a dark turn as we see the first example of true malicious intent from the usually peaceful Chozo. Why would this guy kill them? What are his goals? And who is this mysterious Chozo general? These are the questions that help lay the groundwork for the events of Dread, where we see that a signal from a distant world known as Planet ZDR reaches the Galactic Federation, showing signs that somehow the Parasite X seems to be alive and well. The Federation decides to send out a group of DNA-extracting robots called E.M.M.I made of the most resilient material in the galaxy to survey the planet and see if the parasite can be located. I guess they got tired of sending squishy human researchers and troopers to get murked on these planets, but it still doesn't fare much better for the E.M.M.I who failed to report in. So it looks like it's up to Samus yet again, who receives a bounty to go check out Planet ZDR, locate the E.M.M.I, and figure out why they're sleeping on the job, and if any traces of the X-parasite can be located, eliminate them. Things don't exactly go according to plan. Almost as soon as Samus lands on ZDR, she takes an elevator down deep into the planet's interior where she encounters a figure at an ancient Chozo temple, and if you were paying attention to our little history lesson from earlier, this guy's gonna look familiar. Well, Samus sure doesn't know him, and she's quick to jump into the offense, but this dude is clearly not toying around with her and gets the upper hand pretty easily. I mean, she lands a pretty solid hit on the guy, but he gets her by the throat and seems just about ready to kill her on the spot until something happens to her. She's been stripped of her powers once more, trapped in the deep underbelly of an unfamiliar world and facing some kind of powerful enemy whose intentions are unclear at best. This leaves the legendary bounty hunter with two objectives: survive and escape. I feel like a lot of players probably stuck around this first screen a bit just to get a feel of the controls, and oh man are these slick. The movement here is fast, fluid, and while Samus feels like she's got a good amount of weight to her, she feels entirely in your control. When you can impress me with just how good running and jumping is, you're doing something right, but they sweeten the deal a bit more with one of my favorite new inclusions to Samus's moveset, that being the slide. You don't have your morph ball from the get-go, but you can use this slide to slip through small passages easily without losing any momentum. It helps communicate just how fast-paced this game is, and the progression is dedicated to keeping things feeling fluid and almost effortless when it comes to platforming. Wall jumping is as easy as leaping toward a surface and bouncing off it to rocket in the other direction, and mid-air control is absolutely perfect. This might be the best set of controls for Samus we've had so far. Now, during the times when she has to slow down a bit and take out some enemies, we also have two mechanics brought over from Samus Returns: 360 aiming and the parry. With the use of the left analog stick, Samus can aim in any direction of the player's choosing with ease, and holding down the left bumper will have Samus locked into place to make it easier to aim at a specific angle. It can feel a little strange at first for new players, but after a few uses, this aiming technique can be used to land precise hits with ease. Now, the parry move is one idea that needed the most work from the last time, and thankfully it seems to have gotten it. The idea is that when an enemy is about to attack you, a yellow flash will appear over them, and by hitting the X button at that precise moment, you can counter their attack and return the favor with a powerful blast. This can be the quickest way to take down certain opponents, using their own attacks against them to create an opening and take advantage of their vulnerability. Now, in Samus Returns, this could really just mean waiting. You'd have to sit around until an enemy charges at you, because your normal attacks could be next to useless against even the weakest of enemies, and it made the game feel like it just relied way too heavily on that one move. In Dread though, this is just one way to take out your enemies. Missiles are very effective weapons and can take out smaller enemies with ease, and your arm cannon still feels very useful here. Its rate of fire is also insane. Like, the only limit on how fast this thing can dish out punishment is how fast you can spam the fire button. That said, you can also use melee to get a preemptive strike on enemies that might coax them into launching a counterable attack or just take away a chunk of their health. Either way, you're not slowing down here like you were in Samus Returns. Dread wants to keep you powerful and keep you moving. There are limits to your abilities though, and the game will be sure to remind you of that. As you travel around planet ZDR, you can check in with the E.M.M.I who's still locked into your ship and relays information to you like he did in Fusion. But he's not controlling the network of this environment like he was on the BSL station. He can kind of give you hints, but he can't tell you exactly where you're supposed to go. One threat he does his best to walk you through is one of the things that brought you here to begin with, and that would be the E.M.M.I. Turns out these things have gone rogue, and they seem very intent on hunting down Samus and extracting something from her. They only exist in certain zones of the game, but these encounters can be rather intense, and I think this whole concept is what really helps sell the game. Anytime you enter an E.M.M.I zone, you're no longer the hunter. You are absolutely outmatched by these things that are capable of traveling all over the walls and ceiling, travel through ventilation shafts, and they can sense your movements based off the sounds you make while you walk around, and if they catch you, you have a very small window where you can counter them and get away for a few moments, but if you fail, it's a game over. These zones are often placed in the center of the areas that you're going to explore, so you'll be dodging in and out of them as you try to maneuver around planet ZDR, and it adds one more element that rewards you for collecting abilities and upgrades, as these will give you new ways to avoid or hide from these enemies. This is a Metroid game after all, and you'll be picking up stuff throughout the entire game. There's the usual suspects: your charge beam, varying gravity suits, space jump, screw attack, missile upgrades, as well as expansions to your health and missile ammo. The latter two are split up a little as well, as you'll find most missile expansions that will increase your capacity by 2, but also some that bump it up by 10. And you'll also see plenty of energy tanks, but also energy pieces, sets of 4 smaller tanks that when completed will form a new energy tank, kind of tapping into their inner Zelda a bit there. Now, what's kind of surprising to me is that they keep the morph ball from you for a pretty long time. It's usually one of the first things you get in a Metroid game, but here you might be going an hour and a half in your first playthrough without it. I like this because, well, I missed it. It helps you realize just how useful that ability really is, as you'll be seeing plenty of areas where you know you need it, but you just don't have it yet, but it also helps you appreciate the slide. As you're more conscious of the capabilities of the morph ball, you also notice what a fluid and quick alternative the slide is for traveling around under obstacles. As you gain a solid understanding of each ability's pros and cons, you appreciate both, and one never becomes an outright replacement for the other. What's cool is how you eventually get the ball too, as the game does toy around with the fusion principle here, with many boss encounters utilizing abilities you have to overcome and earn for yourself, and it doesn't hurt that these fights can be really, really good. I think Corbios is gonna go down as one of the most memorable early bosses in the series. I already love this guy because there's so many ways to approach this fight. He's got a few phases, constantly switching things up to catch you off guard, but as you take advantage of not only your own arsenal but also your surroundings, you'll be able to overcome him with wit and skill. This goes for most fights in the game too. These dudes can be really threatening and you have to stay on your toes because Metroid Dread is out to give you a challenge, alright? This game is giving you the most versatile and agile Samus in the series, and it expects you to take advantage of that. An element that makes its way here from Samus Returns is these little interactive cutscenes that play out during fights, and I love the way they're implemented here. There's times where you'll need to pay close attention to your enemies so you can parry a very specific move, and when you do, a scene plays out where Samus goes in for these ridiculous theatrics, really getting hands-on with her opponents so you can mash the attack buttons to either lay into them with missiles or your beam weapon the entire time to deal some additional damage. These cinematic moments in the battles are a sight to behold, by far one of my favorite inclusions to boss combat, but it helps that these moments have to be earned through the player's awareness and reflexes. I do have one gripe with boss encounters though, and that would be their sort of repetitive nature in the second half of the game. I guess these guys are more like mini-bosses. They're certainly not as dramatic or long as bigger encounters, but I fought several variations of these guys, and each time they showed up, it was just like, okay, I guess we're doing this again. Oh, you've got exactly one new move the last guy didn't? That's cool, but you're still dead. And then these guys, well, I don't know what it is, but I had a really tough time getting a hang of them. Okay, actually, I know exactly what it is. It's their stupid red charging attack that has an outlandish hitbox and a very small window to dodge. You're supposed to use one of the new abilities called the Flash Shift, which lets you dart around left to right and helps you avoid damage, but man, your window of opportunity can be really small. The areas you have to fight them in can be really crimped, and sometimes it just felt like it didn't really want to work. And then there's a room where you have to fight two of them at once. Look, I'm all for a good challenge, but I hate this room. It takes a step over the line where it goes from difficult to just stupid. These aren't the only big bads you'll be collecting goodies from though, as there will come a time in each E.M.M.I zone where you've traveled through the right corridors and have enough items to open up a room where these central units controlling parts of the planet and obviously primitive mother brain style AIs are residing. You can take these guys out with little to no effort and absorb their energy to gain access to a temporary buff known as the Omega Cannon, the only weapon capable of taking down the resilient E.M.M.I. Even then, it's not an instant win or anything. You have to open up enough room between you and the killer robot to first whittle down their protective layer and then blast away their core, but it's still nothing too complicated. If you have the slightest concept of spatial awareness, you'll be okay. By defeating these tension-riddled tin cans, you'll obtain a specific trait from them to help flesh out your moveset. This is actually how you obtain the Morph Ball in the early game. Now, like I said before, you'll recognize the grand majority of abilities you can obtain from bosses, E.M.M.I encounters, or the returning Chozo statues. Your beam and missiles will see various upgrades, making them more powerful and widening the range of what they can affect, but you'll also see stuff like the grapple beam and speed booster come back. I'm really glad the speed booster makes a return here. By jumping and sliding and just learning how to move around the terrain, you can rocket through these areas like never before, nearly putting Sonic himself to shame. Of course, this comes with the returning Shine Spark as well, and this might be the most use I've ever seen it get in one game. It's incredibly satisfying to pull off, but the game also hides some upgrades in places where you can only grab them with the use of a Shine Spark, and sometimes other abilities stacked on top of that, and it can be really demanding on your hands to pull some of this off. I love this. The challenge is fun, and nothing matches the feeling of mastering these tricks, but I can also see how this could be incredibly alienating to some players. Like, there's tough, and then there's demanding perfection. This isn't gonna be a win for everyone. Now, that's only gonna be a problem if you're really going out of your way for that 100% completion status, so it stands to reason that not every casual player is really gonna have to even put up with these sections, but there's still plenty for the average gamer to find as well. Stuff like power bombs are just as helpful as ever at revealing hidden objects and passageways, and the incredible force coming out of these things is just, it's so good. The grapple beam sees some really good use here too. Using it for navigation is great. It works just like it did in Super, but it's also given a good amount of combat utility, letting you pull parts of enemies away from them, take away their defenses, stuff like that, but they also find new ways to let you use it to manipulate the environment. I especially like that you can use it to quickly grab onto magnetic surfaces. If this ability never made you feel like Spider-Man before, this will definitely do the trick. Speaking of those magnetic surfaces though, those are tied into one of the new abilities in the game, the Spider Magnet, which allows Samus to grab hold of surfaces surfaces coated with this magnetic blue substance, but climb along them as well. You can use the spider magnet to wall jump up surfaces like this too if you want to get a move on, but you can also grab onto some moving platforms to get through areas quickly too. This ability sees more use than others, like the Phantom Cloak. This will let you turn invisible for a short period of time until your Aeon meter is depleted, at which point it'll start draining your health instead. As you can imagine, this is utilized most frequently during the E.M.M.I encounters. If one of them is close to you, you may be able to find a place to hide and use the cloak to shake them, but beyond that, it's really only good for bypassing very specific doors. I doubt you'll be using it otherwise. The Storm Missile shares a bit of that same problem. This ability lets you lock onto multiple targets and barrage them all with missiles. It's great for opening up specific areas, but it's kind of a slow process to get it to lock onto more than one thing or the same target multiple times, and while I'm sure some people have found ways to make this really effective during combat, to me it just feels cumbersome, and I forget about it as soon as I'm done using it to clear an obstacle in the environment. It's better than the spin boost, which is just a glorified double jump you get later on in the game. Like, it's fine I guess, but it's replaced so quickly with the space jump that it feels really pointless. Like, why is this even here? The cross bombs are a neat idea though. You can use them to lay down a series of bombs in a cross pattern that clear out certain sections of blocks faster, and even be used to cross tight gaps when in morph ball mode. The final new inclusion would be the Pulse Radar, another Samus Returns invention that you don't get until later on in the game this go around, but I think this is probably where it's best utilized anyway. Basically, you can use your Aeon meter to send out a pulse that reveals destructible blocks in the area, which is super helpful at this point in the game because while the map will give you hints that items are hidden in certain locations, this can be used as a way to track them down if you really just can't find them on your own. That said, you'll probably be incentivized to explore these areas from top to bottom already because man, these environments are remarkable. From the initial trailer, I was a little worried that too much of the game would look like this desolate lab, but I was really worried for nothing. Planet ZDR is gorgeous. The sense of atmosphere and life in this place is incredible. It's one of the only Metroid games I can think of where the background just has these non-violent wildlife that you can interact with just to make the place feel a little more real. And then there's the little details, like the film grain that covers the E.M.M.I zones, and it really helps sell that feeling of, well, dread that should be dripping from these locations, and the use of color. Oh, the color is outstanding. Definitely glad I got to play this on the Switch OLED, where these visuals can really pop. It would be hard to accurately describe what a difference this little screen makes on its own, but trust me when I say that Dread looks better on this handheld than it does on my TV. But this is also a game with a mission to pick up the story where Fusion left off, so is the plot of Dread able to keep up with the tight and impressive gameplay?
The Metroid series to me is something I think successfully places the player in Samus's boots. You learn things as she does, you get stronger as she gets stronger, and I feel it really creates a bond between the player and character that only a few other Nintendo franchises manage to pull off well. It's what makes the Trizodia sequence in Metroid Zero Mission so effective. It's what makes everything about experiencing Metroid Fusion so terrifying. Metroid is a very isolated experience, the only thing saving your butt being your own skill and determination. And since I so happen to enjoy these games in isolation very much in the spirit of the franchise, it makes completing them that more rewarding to me. The thrill of getting new upgrades and immediately putting them to use, watching Samus perform a coup d'etat thanks to your help, and when all said and done, replaying it again for a faster time to get a new record and maybe getting a new end screen. That's my Metroid experience, one I look forward to every single time and have been for nearly 30 years of my life.
As beautiful as this place is, it only becomes more dangerous the further into it Samus explores. In time, she encounters the only friendly face left on the planet, a Chozo named Quiet Robe who lays out everything that's been going on. The general who attacked Samus at the beginning of the game is the leader of the Mockin tribe, Ravenbeak. See, Ravenbeak is obsessed with power, basically worshipping the idea itself, and when Quiet Robe and the rest of the Thoha tribe tried to destroy planet SR388 after fleeing the Metroids that had grown too strong for them, Ravenbeak had them all executed so he could preserve the creatures he saw as the perfect warriors he could one day use to lead the galaxy to his own idea of peace and order. Quiet Robe was the only one left alive, kept for his knowledge of the Metroids and the Thoha tribe's ability to control them. Yeah, so apparently the Thoha can control the Metroids, the same creatures they seem to lose control over on SR388. So can the Thoha control the Metroids or not? Does the control weaken as the creatures evolve? Were there too many of them? Like, look dude, I love Quiet Robe and the game has a pretty great story overall, but I'm still kind of stuck on this one potential plot hole. Anyway, Ravenbeak's whole galactic conquest plan kind of got put to the back burner after one of his soldiers was infected with an X-parasite and managed to infiltrate the base here on ZDR. After struggling to fight off the quickly spreading invasion of the X, the parasites were trapped in a facility on the planet, and now with the Metroid species dead, Ravenbeak used the footage of the X to lure Samus and the E.M.M.I here with the intention of using the robots to extract the Metroid DNA from her cells and create his army. Quiet Robe opens the way to Ravenbeak, deactivates the remaining E.M.M.I, and requests Samus to aid him in stopping the crazed tyrant. This is a pretty big bout of exposition. The game just plops right in the middle of the game, and I know I should feel more critical about it, but I mean, you can skip cutscenes if you really don't care about all this, and for somebody that's been following the Metroid series for so long, this scene is everything to me. This is the first time we get to see a Chozo out and about chatting with us in-game like this, and names like Quiet Robe and Ravenbeak, that's something that perfectly fits how the manga depicted this culture, and getting to hear all of this being spoken in the Chozo language is such an enormous treat, but they cap it off with the perfect addition.
Kino ulo turuta. Ana maril sanur pura. Ay marhel kalom.
This is the only speaking line Samus has in the entire game, and it's perfect. She is so cool, and you can hear the confidence in every word she says. She's a Chozo warrior, and she'll get the job done. That's the Samus Aran I know. Sadly, after their discussion, Quiet Robe is assassinated by a Chozo drone, and after the machine is destroyed, Samus is just left to gaze at another one of her family members taken away from her. If this struggle wasn't personal before, it sure is now. Samus makes her way to the open facility, and just like 2 rooms in, she encounters an X-parasite. Look, Quiet Robe said they were contained, not dead. But yeah, by entering this place, we kinda, sort of, maybe accidentally let the X out, which is bad. Really bad. In fact, it's so bad that it shifts the course of the entire game. From now on, every single biological creature we encounter has a little wiggly goo monster living inside it, and man, I love this. It's such a big revelation as we see all these things floating out of the base and quickly take over the entire planet, even taking over the corpse of Quiet Robe, who reactivates the E.M.M.I to hunt us down again. Yeah, I think we all know what needs to happen to this place. This really is awesome though. Seeing all these sci-fi body horror ideas brought from Fusion over to the modern system 20 years later, it feels like they absolutely nailed the tone the X were created for. These things are creepy and kind of disgusting. I like to think this gross sludge we see in the first X room is just a result of the parasite possessing the same host for so long that it's completely decomposed this whole thing and its cells are just mush now. And then there's moments where you get those little revelations of, hey, remember that weird experiment twitching around in that one laboratory? Well, if the X are flying around this place looking for new hosts, uh-oh. The second half of this game is so cool, and I know people were worried that Nintendo was showing off way too much in trailers and stuff, but no, this got me completely by surprise. And it kept a big ol' smile on my face as I kept exploring, fought bosses, collected power-ups, discovered the latent ability to absorb the life force from the creatures that I touch, grabbed missile expansions, and wait, what was that last part? So, this is another cool twist. In the final areas of the game, I started noticing how Adam slowly acted stranger and stranger when talking to Samus, and I started to get suspicious. But watching Ravenbeak keeping tabs on Samus as she starts developing these new energy-absorbing abilities, I put together exactly what was going on here. Turns out, the last time we spoke with Adam at all was on the elevator ride down here. The entire rest of the time, it was Ravenbeak, leading us along so Samus would either have her Metroid DNA inside her extracted by one of the E.M.M.I, or have her fully transform into a form of Metroid herself, whichever came first. While the Metroids are biologically coded to obey those in the Thoha tribe, which might have explained why the baby back in Metroid 2 got so attached to Samus now that I think about it, they are also designed to register the Mach-In as enemies, and while the Thoha DNA in Samus's body was helping keep the Metroid DNA at bay, it's revealed she also possesses Mach-In genes as well. And not just anyone's, but Ravenbeak's, who oversaw the process of infusing his own DNA into Samus herself. Is this woman okay, because her DNA is a clustered smorgasbord at this point, and it's a miracle she even vaguely resembles a human being. With Samus now, for all intents and purposes, succumbing to her Metroid genes, Ravenbeak offers her a place at his side as the ultimate living weapon, but she's obviously not having any of that, and this initiates one of the best final bosses in the whole series. I gotta add, like, I just love how confident this game is that it just let this be the conclusion. I mean, in terms of legacy bosses, we got Kraid, but nothing else. Like, it would have been really easy to find a way to shoehorn Ridley back into all of this, and I love Ridley, I really do, but the guy's gotta die eventually. He does not belong in this game, and I'm glad he isn't here. But this fight between Ravenbeak and Samus, this feels important. It feels earned, and man, it is destroying my thumbs. You have to use just about everything at your disposal during this fight. Even the slide makes its way in here, and these dorks are just spending every second they get just showing off how absurdly over the top they can be. It's an incredible test of your reflexes and skills, and it's one of those bosses that rewards you for learning the patterns. Where a first-time player might get really stuck on the first phase of this fight, but if you fought him a couple of times yourself, you can just step up and clean house like it's nothing. But just as Samus is ready to deal the finishing blow, Ravenbeak gets the upper hand once again and has her life in his grip, claiming that he doesn't even need to keep her alive anymore, as he can just clone her to create the perfect army of the galaxy's most dangerous bounty hunter, and that right there is the final straw. You know how I said that Samus's talk with Quiet Robe was the only time she speaks in the game? I mean, that is true, but it's not the last time we hear her voice. Samus lets the Metroid Enter take over completely, even transforming her entire suit into this new design to resemble what she's become, and drains the energy not only from Ravenbeak, but even the entire ship they've been fighting on. In the wreckage of the vessel, Ravenbeak is taken over by an X-parasite, transforming him into this grotesque amalgamation of everything that X had absorbed, but a good blasting from the Hyper Beam is enough to take it down. We get our escape sequence for the game as Samus sprints from the exploding planet, but just as she's trying to escape, Adam warns her not to touch the controls of the ship as she'll just drain the energy from it. But help comes from an unexpected source as the X-infested Quiet Robe appears from behind her, somehow maintaining his own consciousness long enough to offer himself over to her, using his Thoha genes to help her gain total control over her Metroid form as she flies away to safety while planet ZDR explodes. The ending of this game is intense, exciting, and has implications for our leading lady that will undoubtedly follow her through any future adventures. That might not be so impressive for an isolated incident as just the conclusion to the story, but it's something that's true for the entire adventure as a whole. Metroid Dread wants you to feel helpless, but it also wants you to enjoy the thrill of overcoming those odds and going from the bottom of the food chain on planet ZDR to its apex predator. Not just in the boss fights, not just in your encounters with the E.M.M.I, the planet itself bends to your will as you become more powerful and knowledgeable of its layout. Every ability and item you recover is one step closer to you becoming the master of this location as you seamlessly travel around the planet. It wraps you around through familiar locations and sometimes gates off which way you can progress, but rewards you for breaking its own rules, even to the point where some boss encounters have secret means of defeat by obtaining items you shouldn't even have yet. Metroid Dread nails it. I love this game. Is it better than Super Metroid? Is it the best game in the series? Probably too soon to say, but either way, I don't care. It's everything that I wanted it to be and more. It's a thrilling action adventure that builds off a story that hasn't progressed in nearly 20 years and opens up the door to a bright future people once thought was dying off. Mercury Steam, bravo. I admire the work that went into this title, and I love it with every bit of my heart. Now please, credit everyone who worked on it, not just the people who were there for a certain period of time. Standard practice in the industry is not an excuse. Do what you did with the Metroid formula and become the trendsetters. And to each and every one of you watching, I guess all I can say is please, please buy Metroid Dread. This has been one of the most exciting months of my entire life. Getting to do so much with so many people, being able to share my love for this franchise with all of you, and nothing made it more special than being able to cap it off with a game like this. You know, Metroid Dread is not just a testament to the growth of the franchise or to Samus Aran's journey, it's a testament to you, to us, to the community, to everyone who stuck by this franchise's side, who held it up, who kept it going, who supported it no matter what. It's why I wanted to put such an emphasis on the community for this Metroid month. This game, this month, this marathon, this franchise would not still exist without us. So to each and every one of you, thank you. And of course,
see you next mission. See you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
This is Wayneisboss signing off. I want to offer my gratitude to everyone who helped contribute to these videos, and to thank all of you for helping celebrate this year's Metroid Month. See you next mission. Hello everyone! Metroid Month is over once again for this year, but I am not done quite yet. I still have more coming out soon. I already have a few more videos planned, but they are gonna have to wait a little bit until I can rest up. This was an absolute blast to work on over the past 5 weeks, but I am exhausted, and I'm sure you can understand why. That said, I just want to thank everybody that tuned in to watch all of these. This has been one of the most receptive months for content I've ever had. We hit 5,000 subs. I was on DigiNo Gaming. I received so many more donators on Patreon, and this channel just feels like it is growing more and more, faster and faster all the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. I owe so much to each and every one of you. Of course, I want to give a very special thanks to my friends and colleagues that joined me this month in these videos. You heard them talk throughout every review that I had this month. Those, of course, were Nick, the Game Apologist, Cyrus the Skeptic, That Trav Guy, Mini-Me, Gilly the Kid, and of course, SomecallmeJohnny. Thank you guys so much for joining. You helped to make this a really special occasion and event. And of course, I would not be able to do this without all of my Patreon supporters. There's so many more of you now than there were at the beginning of the month, and I owe a lot of that to Cyrus, but I also just owe it to you guys who actually took the initiative and you actually decided to send money my way and to help support me and to help me keep this going. Of course, I do owe some specific thanks to my top tier patrons, which this month they are Patricia Marcoux, Christine Larkin, Earl Valco, Jeremiah Harrison, Jonathan, Mackenzel, Mr. SP, Wonton Photo, Nicholas Morgan, and Cyrus the Skeptic. I've said it many times before, it's never any the less true. You guys make this possible, and you make it worth it. You guys are keeping this train going. I am gonna need to take a week break just for the sake of mental and physical health, to just not work on any video content, so there is gonna be a little gap there, but I do have blooper reels and everything coming for mid-boss patrons and up. And I may be restructuring how exactly the Patreon rewards are going to work, but we can iron out those details later. As for now, again, thank you so much. I just cannot say it enough. I owe everything to you guys, and I'm so excited to see where we keep going. With all of that said, thank you so much for watching. I have been Wayne, and I'm on to the next project. Catch you next time.